Hi, this is Ed Rising, and welcome back to Ed's Pop-O-Matic podcast, a retro pop culture podcast where everything retro beats the new if you keep it in your heart. And I'm glad that you're joining us today, and I hope that you've been checking out some of our other podcasts. We are on Spotify and iHeartRadio and other platforms, and I have a YouTube page. So if you feel up to it, please check out the podcast on our YouTube page, so you can check out more interviews and more fun with folks and talking about music and TV and all other pop culture things. Today we have an exciting show. We are talking about the '60s group The Turtles. The
Oh,
Turtles.
oh, oh.
Yes, the Turtles who had their big hits, "You Baby" and "It Ain't Me, Babe," and she's my girl, and "You Showed Me," and Eleanor,
What a
and
selfish group.
I'm telling you, man, Selfish Group is the "Happy Together," of course, is their biggest hit. And we have two guys here today that have worked together, come together really, and made up a beautiful new book on the history of the turtles and where they've been, what they've done. If I can find it all here, it's called "Not Just Happy Together: The Turtles" by Mark Arnold and Charles Rosenay.
That's him.
So, welcome, Mark. How are you today? You
Bodybuilding.
got the book,
Bodybuilding.
bodybuilding. That's what I. Yeah, I
Oh,
got
well.
I got this book when I was at the Fest for Beatles fans a couple of months ago, and Charles gave it to me. And there, yeah, I was like, I had the same thing. I was like, oh my goodness, this is huge. But it's got a lot of good stuff in it here. So let's talk about that. Um,
I love that you started by naming well, not all, because there's more, but some of the
sure.
other hits besides Happy Together, because it was not just Happy Together. And that's why
Right.
we titled it that. And you did a quick, rundown of so many of their great songs.
Well, they did have so many great songs. I mean, so many. I mean, they talk about pop music and top 40 hook radio. You know, they had it, and it's very interesting is how that music came together. So my first question I want to ask you guys is, um, why was this music important to you? Mark, you want to start?
Okay. Um, I think it's important to me just the way all kind of 60s pop rock music kind of resonates with me. Um, Outside of like children's records or comedy records, which were my first loves, once I got into the Beatles, it's like anything that sounded anything like the Beatles, remotely or not, suddenly became a favorite of mine. So, in quick succession, I became a Rolling Stones fan, a Monkees fan, a Turtles fan, a this fan, a that fan, and
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
anything that had that mid to late 60s sound, I was like, all right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I dig that. And Charles, before we're gonna you go on, Charles, in the news, this new book, this is their book. This is their book. As Charles just indicated, not just happy together. Am I seeing it on the screen there? There we go.
Now you are, yeah.
Not just, please, not just happy together. In the first portion of the book, Charles kind of gives a beautiful story about how the Turtles music came into your life. Can you share a little bit of that with us without spoiling the book?
Yeah, well, so I was very young, and mom and dad didn't want to do an aquarium, so they got me this little turtle tank. And believe it or not, I had a baby turtle. I've never told this before. I had a baby turtle and it wouldn't eat. And we gave it lettuce and we tried to give it every possible thing and it wouldn't eat. And its shell got soft and it passed away. And I said,
Oh,
someday, some way, I'm going to have to do something that will be a tribute to turtles.
I
And
thought they were going to say that rock and roll saved the turkey turtle.
well, no, I wish it did, because to maybe still be with us. And little Tommy the Turtle, was always probably subconsciously. And Mark said, "Hey, let's write a book on the 1910 Fruit Gum Company." And I said, "Mark, come on, that's ridiculous. You want to do a Beatles book? Okay. You want to do
Indian Giver, come on. Anyway.
Monkey's book? Okay. But what we're going to do is, if we do that, we're going to sell it and we're going to want it back, because you just ruined my joke about being an Indian giver."
Oh.
But anyway, so he said, "No, Charles, do you like the Turtles?" And probably subconsciously, I thought of little Tommy, and I said, "In all honesty, I love the Turtles, and I think they're so underrated, and they had so many great hits besides Happy Together.
Yeah.
Let's do a book on it." Never thinking we would do this, 800-page encyclopedia, which is literally, it's called not just Happy Together, but it's also called The Turtles from A to Z, AM radio to Zappa.
Right.
And in this process and in this journey, Ed, I learned so much about a band that I loved and didn't know so much about, including their, history of being background singers in other bands and working with Zapp all these years. And I was probably one of these guys who knew their hits and a few other songs. And in doing the studies for the book, learned to love them even on a whole new level because of so much great material they put out.
Yeah. Well, if you look at this book that you guys made, not only do they have a lot of history of the band, but they've got wonderful photos here of some of the singles covers and album covers, and photos from concerts and performances and things like that. For some of them from our friend Daniel Costin. I was very happy to see that Daniel was part of this project.
A big part of it. He can see a lot of great photos. Yeah.
And one of the things that I was really impressed with is that we have a lot of interviews that were taken with various different other people who were associated with the Turtles, played with the Turtles, or toured with the Turtles, and so I was really enjoying that, and I enjoyed the fact that I could read these interviews as opposed to just downloading the YouTube video and so forth. So that's you have that as a record. So that's very, very cool.
Yes.
Mark, what is your favorite Turtle song?
Yeah. It changes from time to time. I mean, in recent times, I've been saying "Sound Asleep" a lot. I always like "Happy Together." I can't say one. It's just like saying your favorite Monkees song. "Guide for the Married Man," things like that.
What's interesting about their sound is that they were sort of hippie-esque. I mean, they definitely. I think there's a portion of the book where they talk a little bit about being a quote drug band, or not quite a drug band. Now, there were drugs around, obviously, in that era with firstly all those bands, right? All those people. But, the music that the Turtles made was so happy.
Yes.
It's L-A-N-O-G, I think you're swell. Who else? Nobody else made a record like. Nobody else said swell in their song.
Well, it's true. There was a lot of happiness to it. "Happy Together" will always probably be my favorite song. But there's a few ones that people never heard of, and I think Mark will know what I'm going to say. But there's one song that's so Beatles-ish called "We Are Gumby," which I'd never heard of before this book.
Never heard that one.
And you have to, because it's so fun and so Beatles-ish, and it just kind of puts it all into place why this band should be so much greater than it is in the world's view, why they should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and why they deserve the respect they get in such a book, which we're proud was put out by Genius Music Publishing, Genius Music Books, and is available through Amazon, and people are loving it.
That's so great. Talking about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, what makes you think specifically why the Turtles should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Let me, before Mark tells you, because that is his specialty.
That's his area.
That he did a whole article, a whole feature on that
Right.
in the book, and we'll talk about all the parts of the book in a second. But the question is, why are they not why they should be, but why are they not? And it's because in my mind, they were just such great AM radio hit makers. And you think of those
Yeah.
kind of hit makers, and it's the Paul Revere and the Raiders, and it's the Monkees, and it's the Turtles, and it's Three Dog Night, and you go on, and the Grassroots. A lot of these bands didn't get the respect of other they're not cool enough maybe for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, or they didn't do those psychedelic album tracks that they're looking for. They certainly were influences. They certainly are part of the musical DNA of all these generations. And how many films and how many videos and commercials have Happy Together in it? Just on that one song alone, they should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But aside from the Dave Clark Five, I can't think of a lot of those AM hit bands that are even in there. But that's the reason in my mind they're not. Mark will tell you why they should be.
All right, Mark, take it away.
All right, why they should be? Well, if the reason they if reasons are given like this, oh, they don't write their own music. Well, Elvis didn't write his own music. Oh, they don't play their own instruments, but au contraire, they actually did play their own instruments. So if that's an issue with, say, the Wrecking Crew and stuff like that, White Whale is too cheap to use the Wrecking Crew, so the band members played on their own records and played on tour.
That's a big thing right there.
Yes.
If a reason is, they didn't have enough hits. Well, how many hits do you have to have? I mean, it's like there's a lot of people in there in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They're riding on the crest of one hit, and Charles mentioned the AM FM radio thing. I mean, well, okay, so the Turtles didn't do FM radio much, I suppose, but they went on and worked with Frank Zappa. I mean, you can't get much heavier than that. I mean,
right.
It's almost like an about face.
Great
Um,
point. Yes.
but they also worked with a lot of people that are or also should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, they worked with John Lennon, they worked with Yoko Ono, they worked with Bruce Springsteen, they worked with Blondie, they worked with T Rex, Mark Bolan, whatever. And it goes on and on. They did all these things like that, and
Right.
I think Howard Kalin said it in the interview Charles did with him, that basically it boils down to just politics.
Yeah.
And this is not a criterion for me, but it's like the interesting thing is, it might be because people perceive the Turtles or Flo and Eddie as too goofy and doing too much shtick and humor and stuff like that. But guess who did that? Like every Christmas, the Beatles.
The Beatles. Right.
Guess who did that at every press conference? The Beatles. Guess who? So guess who did that in Hard Day's Night in Hell? The Beatles. And even Magical Mystery Tour. So
and three of my favorite bands, Ed, the Beatles, the Monkees, and the Turtles, all share in humor, in great music, in personality. Those three. When you think of what concert would I want to see where I'm going to have fun, walk away smiling, walk away singing every song. Those are the three that are. And because the three of us are together here, and Mark mentioned the interview I got to do with Howard Kalin, I think we should send out props and credit to Plastic EP in Australia, because he's one of the reasons we're friends. He's the real reason that I got to interview Howard Kalin, because he was persistent. I didn't give up on nudging Plastic EP to get him on the show, and he kept hammering Howard till Howard probably said, "Oh, I got to get this guy off my back. I'll finally say yes." Mark gave me all these crazy questions, like, will we ever have any of his stuff released when he was in junior high school and all this? And Howard said, "No, you're out of your mind. It's not. No one wants to hear that." And so there's a lot of funny stuff. If you can find it on YouTube, it's great. But even better, read the complete transcript of it in the book. And to have Howard Kalin's interview in our book, gives it so much credibility because it's not just a discography. You mentioned all the great photos and illustrations that are in there. Yeah, it's that. It's the interviews with all those amazing people. One of the Turtles, of course, two of the Turtles, three of the all as many guys we can get, plus anyone who is ancillary connected to them. And then you go on and you read their solo stuff and the stuff that they did post Turtles and pre-Turtles. And it's very comprehensive and very proud of that.
Well, I am too, because I had seen the interview that you and Plastic and Mr. Kalin had done together, and I was really glad that the transcript is in the book here, and photos as well of the three of you together in that podcast. It was so yeah, so that's really good to be able to dig into that and enjoy. As far as the solo careers or later careers, I'm a big fan of the Flo and Eddie Moving Targets album.
Wow.
That had some really interesting tracks, and I remember I have a bootleg of a live album they did, I think, in the early '90s, and they were like completely way out there. I mean, they were so much fun, but they were having so much fun with these songs, and they would still do all the '60s hits, and try to incorporate that higher voice, and singing it exactly properly as it should be sung, which was also kind of humorous in a way because it was not really the voices of that time,
It's interesting because they took their music very seriously, but they didn't take themselves seriously. They poked fun of their contemporaries and they poked fun of themselves. To have a musician on stage who's doing nothing but throwing a tambourine up in the air, dropping it, and oops, picking it up. Who does that? They were so special. But then when you listen to the harmonies and you listen to the vocals, whoa, wow, right there. Yeah.
But with Mark Bolan in particular, it's a very strange thing to watch sometimes because he is like the most far out person in the entire world. And I just was wondering to myself, because I don't know the birds. I don't know the Turtles as well as I should, but I'm just curious about what other members of the band thought when this guy, who was essentially playing tambourine, if he was playing tambourine, and doing the harmonies and so forth, which was a beautiful job. But he's got this idiot smile on his face, and he's just being Mr. Far Out. Mark, what do you think the band's impressions were of all of this?
Well, the thing is, I'm sure all of us had people we hung out with in high school, and in those little cliques and groups and stuff like that, you might have been that person, but somebody in that group was the goofball who did all this silly stuff and everybody laughed and you kept him as your friend because he was the goofy guy. Well, in the case of Mark Volman, that was that guy,
Yeah.
And so because these guys, they knew each other since high school. It's like it's hard to believe they knew each other before at a younger age than the Beatles did, and it's
Yeah.
like and they just kept it up. Eventually touring, made many of them retire and they had to replace band members, but the initial core was that high school singing choir group, that Westchester High that went on to, become a real band like the Monkees.
And who
Yeah.
cared? And who cared what musicians thought? Because it's their band. They're the
Yeah.
Lennon and McCartney of the band, and they're the Lennon, McCartney, Harrison, and Starr of the band. They're all, and if other musicians, would have said something, well, they might have been out because, Kalin and Volman, they were Flo and Eddie. They were the Monkees. They were the Turtles. They were the the roots of the band, and they were the heart of the band. They were the
Yeah.
harmonies of the band. And if Mark, played guitar on stuff, great. He played saxophone on stuff, whatever. We don't care. We love that he was on stage doing the fun stuff.
Oh yeah. I mean, he's a trip to watch, but it's
Yes.
just it's very unusual, and it may help make the Turtles, a fun and an unusual band. One of the later songs that I really liked very much was called Rebecca. which was sort of making fun of Eleanor and some of those other songs, but it's a it's
Yeah,
great.
when they were putting out the 4 major Flo and Eddie albums during the 70s, there were songs. Well, some of them actually were Turtles songs that they re-recorded from their last unreleased album. Eventually, all that stuff did get released, but
Mm-hmm.
those 4 albums, there is a Best of Flo and Eddie collection that if you just buy that separately, and just close your eyes, you think, wow, this is a long lost Turtle album from the 70s, because Let Me Make Love to You, Rebecca, the remake of Eleanor, and, Mama Open Up, Hot, different songs like that. They have their same place against the Turtles. It's just everybody considered Flo and Eddie. Oh, those are just those goofy guys again,
Yeah.
I mean, people did get it. I mean, Alice Cooper got it. That's why he had him open for them many years on tour and stuff like that. Different groups, they got it. Kiss got it. I'm trying to think of other
Right.
groups that got it. Well, obviously, the people that I mentioned before. David Cassidy, your buddy, he got it. They did, they worked on one of his albums and they performed, you can see it on YouTube. It's like David Cassidy singing a song with Flo and Eddie in the background. It's goofy, but,
Yeah.
it's
I'll
great.
I'll have to look for that. Probably somewhere sometime in the 80s, I guess. Maybe
No,
I'll look it up. 70s,
70s, I think.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, I'll look it up.
But after Partridge Family, not during.
Yeah. It's later stuff. I was and just looking at the history of the band and where they came from. I mean, they came out as being a beach band, a surf band, playing the Ventures, playing Beach Boys-esque type of things, Jan and Dean stuff, and somehow morphing into the pop band that they became, and so it's very interesting, and how that comes together, and then, like you said, moving into all these different aspects of their lives, the legal issues that must have taken hold where they couldn't use their own names, so they came up with Flo and Eddie,
Mhm.
and things like that, so they would be able to continue working and making money and being able to be out there on stage, being able to perform and write, or rather record with John Lennon and with Frank Zappa and so forth. So
Mhm.
they didn't let little things get them down, or even major contract issues get them down. They managed to uh,
Mhm.
through things like that.
Mhm.
Uh,
Charles, were you going to say something? I think you're on mute.
I love that you're so well versed and I don't know if it's from our book or from your own research, but I appreciate that because we do a lot of interviews where the hosts only know "Happy Together" or a few of the hits. So what you just said right now illustrates, aside from how good your hair looks,
Thank you.
illustrates so much of what we try to convey, to bring them from that plateau of the hits they had to another level. So thank you for
Well, I
verbalizing.
got in. I got into the Turtles some years ago. I was in an oldies group, and a bunch of guys, and we got into Gary Puckett. I got into the Turtles. I got into the Frankie Valli. I was all into this years and years and years ago, but I sort of got into it all again. And I just saw Frankie Valli in concert the other night.
Mhm.
So it's just wonderful to see these people still working, and still performing, and still singing. And even though Howard Kalen is no longer touring with the current edition of the Turtles, and Ron Dante is in there now, it's great that that music is still being played for everyone, and
Yes.
and putting together the Happy Together tour,
Yeah.
and how influential that has been. That is they should be getting money from every rock oldies band that ever
No.
goes on tour in some kind of a package tour. They should be getting something for that.
I wanted to say something. Is like I did. I love it that our book and also just word of mouth has turned people on that to the Turtles that I know. I have a friend, longtime friend named Lee, who runs Lee's comic book store. It's and he never thought about seeing the Turtles, but he read my book and everything like that. and he checked out the Happy Together tour, and he really enjoyed it. He actually admitted Turtles weren't my favorite. It was actually the Cowsills, but hey, he went. It was all these groups that he basically ignored his whole life. And he says, "Oh, I know these songs. I know this," and that's usually what happens when people hear the Turtles. They go, "I know this song. I didn't know they did this song," and they become new fans overnight. So.
And that's the cool thing about think of the current tour, because the Cowsills, who have had their own long history of, my God, ups and downs and all kinds of crapola, and they have a viable opportunity to be performing in large arenas for a lot of people because of the success of the Happy Together tour. And you and I also, the three of us, are well aware as to how successful the Happy Together tour is, because if there was no Happy Together tour, there would not be
A book
there
called
would not be
a book called Not Just Happy Together, the Turtles from A to Z.
Yes, there would be that. Yes, but I'm talking about the Monkees.
Well, that's true. David Fishoff, was doing the Happy Together tour first, and then approached the Monkees, about that. You're correct, sir.
You took me to talk to see them. I didn't know talk was like, we can do this. It's great stuff, man. Great stuff. But yeah, so I really recommend to my audience to get out there and look for this book. And as Charles and Mark have both said, there's a lot of interviews in here. There's a lot of history about the band and discussion of all their albums and single releases and things of that nature. Posters from tours from long ago and even from recent years. So there's a lot of stuff here to really dig into and enjoy. You guys have any other thoughts that you want to share about the book, or even the process of doing this together? That's something I was also very interested in.
That was a pleasure. The back and forth with that, I don't particularly like Mark, but when we did this together, it was so fluid. And he would pick a song, and we pretty much had to listen to every song in the complete Turtles discography, some which we knew already, obviously, and some which we were learning. And my kids would hear it in the background and go, "Wait, Dad, is that the Turtle? Is that?" No. They would ask, "Is it the Beach Boys?" No. "Is it a Beatles outtake?" No. "Is it the Raspberries?" I go, "No, guys, it's the Turtles." And they were like, "Oh, wow, they sound so great." And Mark would do a review usually first, and then I would try to come up with like snide remarks and follow up the review with something more entertaining. But in so many cases, I couldn't be critical or skeptical or even silly, because the song quality were so great. And as much as we disagreed, which is that Siskel and Ebert kind of thing, which is fun with songs, we agreed so much on the quality of the material, and it was an absolute joy because we worked on it separately, and when it had to come together, we worked on it, together. And just the process was a pleasure. I hope to be able to do many more books, but none of them with Mark. I mean, but again with Mark in the future.
That's lovely, lovely. And Mark, you would like to respond in kind, I imagine.
No, he doesn't know.
I've been strong. I've been given the. I've been told to remain silent. I plead the fifth. Yeah, there we go. I drink the fifth. There we go.
That's a good idea.
Anyway,
cool.
no, it's fun doing it. It's like, and Charles has said in other interviews, I'm like the serious one, but sometimes we flip-flopped around. He would say something that he really liked about a particular song, and then I'd say some goofy comment. So it's like I'm not immune to it, but I had a personal affinity to a lot of the actual facts. I'd seen their documentary so many times. I knew it by heart. I love that documentary. So it's like, when they talk about they didn't know what they're doing, we'd sign everything and anything, you put a contract in front of us, and things like that. And they talk about their different problems with all their managers and getting ripped off and
You
everything like
imagine
that.
the naivete
Yeah,
that's
I knew all
involved in,
that
and you
stuff
don't
because of
think that.
watching
You
it
don't think of
over and
that
over.
because
Yeah,
when you look at their music, there's so much cleverness in
yeah,
their music. It comes across as very innocent on
yeah,
one level, right? And it comes across as very poppy, poppy, poppy.
yeah,
But then there's another side of that song that you listen to another way, and it is very different. It can be very dark,
yeah,
And so you wouldn't expect that these guys, the two frontmen in particular, that would be fooled essentially by all these different business people in the music industry. But as we all know, the music business is littered with people who have been taken advantage of and lost their contracts and lost their copyrights. And dear
yeah.
God, the Beach Boys, the father saw the goddamn.
Well, I was
Pardon
gonna
me.
say the Turtles had the last
You know,
laugh because their music came up for sale in 1974, and Flo and Eddie pulled their resources and were able to buy the entire catalog,
oh,
which is
very good.
something these other artists didn't or weren't able to do.
Right.
And so ever since the mid 70s, they've been profiting off of anytime you hear "Happy
Anytime
Together,"
you're happy together,
cha-ching,
yeah.
it's like
There you go. But then you can make a lot of money doing that. And it's a great song. It's my favorite Turtle song, I suppose. I love it. It makes me feel good, and it closes virtually all my '60s and pop music playlists and things like that. It's one of my favorites. And this has been so much fun talking with you guys. As my audience knows, because both Mark and Charles have been on the podcast many times, we know each other from working with our friend from Australia, Mr. Plastic EP. And so and once again, we want to give him kudos because he was such a big part of getting that interview together with Charles and Mr. Howard Kalin. So let's go a little bit around the table there. Mark, you want to get started and tell us a little bit about your book while Charles holds up the book to gain some little bit more muscle in his arms there.
Well, I wanted to hold up. There he is. Oops. There's Plastic right there. Oops. Show up there. There he is. Yay.
There he is,
Charles
in the
and
book.
Howard. I wanted
There
to show
you
that a
go.
little bit. Anyway, well, what am I talking about now? Just giving a plug for the book?
Yeah, plugging
Yeah.
for book and plugging for your other things
All
and
right.
where we can find you and that kind of jazz.
Okay. Well, you can find me on Facebook. You find me all the usual places. The book itself, which Charles is holding up, Not Just Happy Together, actually has its own website, which neither of us have plugged yet. So it is notjusthappytogether.com. You don't have to buy it there, but we'd appreciate if you did. You can also find it on Amazon, barnesnoble.com, all the usual places that you buy books. And what else can I say?
Who was the
I know.
publisher?
The
It's
publisher
Genius.
is Genius.
Publishing.
Yeah.
Genius.
And they do a lot of music books, a lot of great music books. They're a pleasure to work with. And let's see, as far as other books that I'm working on, I recently put a 2-volume history of Mad called Unconditionally Mad. I'm wrapping up a Crazy magazine book, believe it or not. It just came together really, really fast. And I'm still working on a TV cartoons book about TV cartoons that time forgot. As far as music books go, I've done my own Beatles book. I did 2 Monkeys books with Michael Ventrella, and I did this Turtles book. I'm open to future books. I mean, I don't know what Charles and I have planned. Could be another Monkeys book, could be on another group. Who knows?
Sounds great.
But we'll work together at some point.
I'm so
Doing
glad,
something.
Mark. I'm so glad you guys are able to put this together.
And I
And
want to share. You asked what else Mark is going to do.
what's that?
He's
Oh, yeah.
joining me on the Magical History Tour this year. It's the only time the two of us will be together to sign copies of the book. So hopefully he's bringing some. And we'll be there. Yeah, we'll
Okay.
be there in person at the convention as kind of co-guest, because he'll be sitting at my table, believe it or not. He didn't even know that, but he's going to do all the things that all the regular folks who go on the tour, which Ed, you almost did.
Almost did. Next year, maybe.
and God willing, you'll do in the future. But yeah, that's the magical history tour that we do every summer. We go to London and Liverpool, and we do a side visit to Henley, George's home, which is at www.liverpooltours.com. And it'll be the first time in history that Mark and I are together in person. We've been on endless podcasts and Zooms and StreamYards, and we've been in your bedrooms and in your homes, but now we're gonna actually be together in person. And the only thing I'd love to plug is the book that you know and love so much. And it's
yes.
the book of top 10 Beatles lists, where 64 celebrities gave their favorite Beatle lists. I'm happy that I've done 4 books. 2 of them are music books, the Turtles book and this Beatles book, which are, like Mark said, always available on Amazon. Yes.
Very cool. And just in case you guys don't remember, Mark is also the podcaster for the Fun Ideas podcast, which you can get anywhere. And Charles, you've also written that book about Connecticut horror stories.
Yeah,
we
true.
wanna-
Connecticut, and I did a similar book to the Beatles top 10 list called the Book of Top 10 Horror Lists, which I sell at Chiller and bring them to conventions and do a lot of library appearances. I have 4 books. Mark has 40. So, it's a little disparity. And if you
It makes it easy to carry them around.
and I love Mad magazine. So I anyone who's ever grown up reading a copy of Mad, did one of the fold-in pinups in the back, or just smiled at Alfred E. Newman, get Mark's book.
And Charles is in there because he wrote a letter to Mad way back when.
Oh God!
before any of us knew each other at all.
Oh, that's funny. That's great.
Ed, no, it's true. Before I published Good Day Sunshine, before I was a published editor, journalist, a magazine writer, book writer, I wrote a letter to Mad Magazine probably in 1911 or so, and I think the cover's the Towering Inferno spoof, and it got published.
It got published. That's the key. I didn't even get one published in it.
And the fact that Mark and I are so close and have collaborated on so many things, and that our loves are so similar, and that he does a book on Mad and I have a letter in it. I mean, the planets align correctly.
That's fantastic. Beautiful, man. All right, so I want to thank you guys for being our guests tonight and talking about our turtles and talking about the book
Turtles.
Not Just Happy Together. And here it is again.
Show the back
there it is. There's that beautiful cover by Mark Arnold and Charles Rosenay. And hey. And,
I want to dedicate this show. Can I dedicate this show to Tommy the turtle when I was 4 years old? Yes.
I love it. That's beautiful, man. That's great. So my name is Ed Rising. Thank you for coming on to the Ed's Pop-O-Matic podcast, a retro pop culture podcast with everything that retro beats and new. If you keep it in your heart, please check us out on Spotify and iHeart and so forth. And my YouTube page, check it out. We got videos of all kinds of fun shows that we've had. And I thank you for your support. Have a wonderful day. You can check me out on Facebook if you're not too tired, and do that. And Charles and Mark, best of luck to you guys with the book and everything else that you're doing. Have a great rest of the summer, everybody.
Bye.